And I know Anita can testify to this too, being the parent of a special needs child has opened up to me realizations that I never thought of, priorities in my life that I never dreamed I would be thinking of. It's just taught me to look at life altogether differently. Things that weren't important to me 10 years ago are very important to me now because of the situation that I deal with, every day. Living with Josh has just taught me to look at everything with a different set of eyes. Back when I was in grade school, we had in my school a special needs classroom, and we had no interaction with those kids. And they were known unaffectionately as the retards. I use that word myself, not knowing any better. But that's who they were. We didn't know them, we didn't like them, we didn't understand them, and we were terrified of them. And whenever there was any kind of interaction with them, they'd be on one side of the room, we'd be on the other side of the room, and we wouldn't talk, we wouldn't even look, because they were the retards. And our response to what we didn't know and to what we didn't understand was to criticize it and to mock it. And that's what we did. They were the retards. That's what's happening in today's gospel, from the Gospel of St. John. Jesus is presenting himself in such a way that they could not understand him, they couldn't get him, they couldn't come to grips with his message. So rather than try and open their eyes and try and see things in a new and different way, they did what people do. They mocked and they insulted. Because it's easier to maintain your level of misunderstanding than it is to change it. It's easier to stay in the attitudes that you've formed within yourself than to try and find new attitudes, than to try and find new ways of looking at life, new ways of approaching things. I was forced to. Most of us aren't. But every day we have that choice before us. Every day, as Jesus presents himself to us as something new and as something different, he asks us to force open our eyes and to look at life and to look at everyday life with eyes that we never had before, with understanding that we never had before, with comprehension that we never thought possible. And that's the key to understanding him. That's the key to understanding the good news, the key to understanding the New Testament and what his message is all about. He speaks to them in this passage today, sentence after sentence after sentence, taking them deeper into the reality of who he was, until finally he says it quite plainly: before Abraham was, I am. I am. Using the divine name, equating himself with God to a group of people who should have been able, because of who they were and what they were historically, should have been able to understand that, should have been able to get their arms around that and accept him for who and what he was. The promised one, the one they've been waiting for since the beginning of time, standing right there in front of them, telling them, yes, that's me. And they couldn't get it, because they couldn't see or think past their own perceptions, their own limited understanding of who and what they were and of who and what he was. And so their response was to criticize, to mock, and to insult. There's something wrong with you. You're crazy. You have a demon. You're not right. And he responds continually, taking them deeper into the mystery of who and what he is. And again, finally, plainly reveals himself, and still they don't get it. Well, isn't that just like you and me? Isn't it? When confronted with what we can't understand, with what we can't get our arms around, do we accept it or do we run from it? Do we change our way of thinking to be able to open ourselves to what this understanding is, or do we retreat into what we're used to thinking and feeling and perceiving and finding some comfort and satisfaction in that? I can't understand what's being said to me. I can't understand what's being brought to my attention. I would rather not deal with it, so I won't. That's what we do. That's what the Jews did. What Jesus confronts us with in the reality of his presence is to open our eyes and to see him and to see life altogether differently. Well, how do we do that? How does that happen within us? I think when we look at life, when we look at who we are and what we are, when we look at what we have, we can all find levels in our lives where we're happy and we're satisfied and we're fulfilled. We have good, loving families around us, friends, neighbors, good, successful careers, whatever. We're comfortable for the most part. But deep inside, each and every one of us, there's also a level of unhappiness, a level of sorrow, a level of need that we don't talk about, that we don't share with anyone, even those who are closest to us. Deep within each of us, there's a terrifying loneliness, a terrifying emptiness that we just don't want to deal with because we're too afraid to go there, aren't we? But when you confront that deep loneliness, that terrible isolation that you feel, if you confront it correctly, it can teach you to look at life with the new eyes that we're called upon to have. Each of us has that terrible loneliness deep within us. Each of us does. And what we have to recognize is that, first of all, if that loneliness and if that unhappiness within us goes unresolved, that's what leads to the anger and the bitterness and the hatred that arises out of us and causes us to sin. If we don't deal ultimately with the question that's rooted deep within us, that question of unhappiness, that question of loneliness, that question of feeling so unfulfilled, even though everything in our lives is going well, that's the mystery we all confront. And if we don't resolve it, well, we just miss the mark. And it prevents us from understanding and seeing the things that we need to understand and see. So how do we resolve that? First of all, we have to learn not to be afraid of the questions and the doubts and the fears that rage within us. We have to learn not to be afraid of them. All too often, those things are not the problem. The problem is our commentary on them. I'm not supposed to feel the way I'm feeling. It's not right. I shouldn't feel unhappy. I shouldn't feel sorrowful. I shouldn't feel lonely. Well, who told you that? Who told you that you had no right to feel the way you feel? Your feelings aren't the problem. It's your commentary on them that is. Stop it. And look deeply at that root question within you. Look deeply at that unresolved loneliness within you, because it is not your loneliness, it is his. It's not your pain, it's his. It's not your sorrow, it's his. It's not his isolation, it's his. The loneliness and the pain and the sorrow and the suffering that you feel inside, that's your share in the passion of Christ. That's what you're called to have in your lives. That's your share in his life. And it's a gift. It's a gift. He gives it to you so that if you can just face it, he'll resolve it for you and take you to levels of meaning and understanding that you never, ever thought possible. Because then you can see with his eyes and know what he knows and understand what he understands. And the unfamiliar all of a sudden isn't so unfamiliar anymore, and it's not so frightening anymore. If you can go to that unresolved place of pain in your life and accept it as pain that he has given to you as your share in his pain, then you can understand him. Then you don't have to mock what you don't know. You don't have to criticize what you don't know. You don't have to jump at what you don't understand. If you can accept that level of pain, that level of isolation, that level of loneliness in your life, and understand that's your share in the cross, that it's your share in the passion, then life takes on all kinds of new and different meaning for you. Because then you can begin to look at other people with his eyes and extend to them his love, his mercy, his concern, his passion, his healing. He continues his work through us. We all know that. We all say that. Well, how does that happen? It happens when we begin to accept the pain in our lives as his pain, given to us for a reason, given to us so that we can become more and more like him, to see with his eyes, to touch with his hands, to feel with his heart, to care with his mercy, with his understanding. And when we do that, we share in his work of redemption. We share in his work of salvation. Because when you look at life with those eyes, everyone you meet and everyone you confront is a possibility for you to extend Christ's healing to them, to extend his love and his mercy and his compassion to them. It's what we all say we want to do, but we just don't know how to do it. The way there is just to look deep within yourself and to find whatever it is that you're so terrified of and accept it as his gift to you. It's not a challenge. It's his gift. It's his way of opening you up to all that life is and all that can happen in life. All that can happen to anyone. It's not easy, but it's something that we can begin. It's something that we can find our way to see with his eyes, to feel with his heart, to reach out with his mercy, with his love, with his tenderness. That's what redeems the world. That's what saves the world. That's what's been given to us as our task and as our responsibility. Again, we say we believe that, we say we understand that, so then we better be about it. And so I would ask you, as we move through the rest of this season of Lent, not to be afraid of whatever terrors that exist deep within you. Not to be afraid of them, but to accept them and understand them as real gifts, as his gift of life to you. One thing that you can say about Jesus is that he lived with a passion. He was so passionate about life. He was so passionate about being human. And then when it came time for him to let go of that life, he did so willingly. He did so understanding what it was that he had to go through. But let's face facts. He went kicking and screaming because he loved life. Wouldn't you like to love life that much? Wouldn't you like to have life with that level of intensity, with that level of commitment, with that level of understanding? Wouldn't you like to be able to see everything around you with a different set of eyes, with a different level of understanding, with a different way of approaching everything, of seeing everything? That's what he invites us to. That's what he calls the new life that we're supposed to have with him. over and over and over throughout the Gospel of John, and this passage is just a reflection of it. He talks about him abiding in us and we abiding in him. His presence alive and active in us. Okay, it's there. It's there for us every day, whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not. The way to confront it, the way to meet it, is to meet that level of unhappiness and loneliness and isolation and fear that exists deep within each of us. And don't tell me it's not there, because it is within each of us. So go to that lonely place. Go to that place where you feel so unsure and so terrified and so alone, and find him there waiting for you. Find him there giving you his life, his love, and his eyes. And learn to approach life differently with him. Every day, abiding in you, at the center of your being, at the core of who you are. He's there. He's there waiting for you, and he'll take you to places you never thought possible. Amen.